Hey guys, what's up? We're back over at Subi Lou's place. Today I've enlisted some extra help for the project. I got my cousin over here, E-Mans, just chilling. We're going to do the full shifter bushing install. So for those of you that are like, hey, didn't you just recently do that? I did for the shifter column section, but at the time we didn't have a full kit, so we didn't do the two bushings that are actually under the hood. So we're gonna go through that, but obviously I wanna show you the full walkthrough. So we're gonna speed through the process of the shifter column section once more, show you how that's done, and then we're gonna go into depth when it comes to the under hood portion. So we have quite a bit of work cut out for us. Fortunately the weather's cool, it's not raining anymore, so thank God for that. But it still seems gloomy, which is nice. It's making it cool for us, so let's just jump straight into it. All right guys, so firm disclaimer for this video, for this install, you're gonna require a few tools. All right, so first things first, for the shift column, you wanna make sure that the handbrake's all the way in. Then we're gonna lift this right here, the armrest, well, not the first one, the second one, right here where the seam is at, you're gonna basically tug it quite a bit. So you're gonna use a little force. You're not gonna break anything, don't worry. And then basically this section right here where the seam's at, as you can see, oh, it's a little hard. There we go. So again, sounds scary, but it's not as hard. That means that this portion's come off. Now we're gonna detach this section because we need this part to be removed. So let me do that real quick. You'll use two hands. It's obviously a lot easier to remove this ring. And then we'll just leave that as is. We'll just pull it up like a sock. So hold on. All right, so I got my cousin holding the camera. There we go. Pulls right off, pull it up like a sock. So now this will allow us to basically remove. The next portion is down here by the shifter column. We're gonna remove this little cover again, so that way when we actually go to remove it, it comes right out like so. And so now we have this exposed. So the next section will be to start removing some bolts and then also removing this section. So let's get to that. All right, so now that that's removed, just in case, we're gonna start removing some of these bolts to obviously get to the shifter column. And that way we can remove this piece as well, because we're definitely gonna need that extra room. So we're gonna jump straight into that. So next, if you guys remember the splash screen, I mentioned at least 3 or 4 tools that you guys are gonna need. So this is where the Phillips head screwdriver comes in. We got Subi Lou taking off both of these screws. You're gonna need to do that regardless. A lot of people instruct that you don't have to remove this. Just do it. Honestly, like, even if you have the smallest of hands, it's extremely uncomfortable, and forbid you guys accidentally drop a bushing. It's just not fun. So, yeah, so we're doing that. And next, we're gonna use it down here to remove this little bridge. Again, that's to be able to remove this middle section right here. All right, now to remove this piece, once those screws are removed, you'll notice that this hook is latched here as well as there. So you have to be careful and just lift and kind of pull it out on both sides. You'll notice that this will flex a little bit. That's kind of normal. It's just part of the process. Just be careful because it does look a little delicate. But as you can see now, even this portion's removed and come detached. So now we'll be able to basically pull this out and then remove it. So before we're able to fully remove it, the last part is, this one's already had the cover removed, but there's these 2 little buttons holding it back here. You'll remove it literally just with like a flathead or with your nail if you have it slightly long enough, or a trim kit removal piece, whatever floats your boat. And then once that's done, you should be able to essentially pull this out. Right in here, there's kind of like a little, it's not a screw, but it looks kind of like a insertion that goes into a hole there. You'll see it in a moment once we pull this out. So just keep note of that, because you're going to require to line that up once you put this back together. So we'll remove it right now. Forgive the background noise, but so right here where the 2 pieces meet, all right, so we're wiggling it out. As you can see, it's getting wiggled out. So again, just be careful that it doesn't reclip. So the best solution that we usually do is lift it up, and then that way it gets over this piece. So push this down a little bit, pull that center piece up. Keep going. There we go. Okay. So now we'll be able to just pull it out, straight out, as so. And then just be careful, lift. And as you can see right there, there's that little nub that I was telling you that goes into the hole. But voila, it is out.
No damage, no damage.
So again, really apologize for the background noise. It's Sunday, so people feel like they need to do gardening. But anyways, again, for those of you that watch my videos, you'll know that at one point we did a center column, but we didn't have a complete kit. Huge shout out once again, and thanks to the sponsors, ADDW1, for sending out their kits. So, you know, my theme is black and red. So they sent out some nice red pieces. Their kit does differ a little from the other companies in that it's not requiring the spacers. So that's interesting, it's different. So biggest disclaimer is that when you do see us remove the other ones, it's a little different. Normally you have these stock ones, which are these rubber grommets. And if you're doing this the first time, you're gonna need some pliers to basically wiggle these out, and I'll show you why. So you have the main bushing portion at the bottom, and then essentially this top portion goes through the center and sits in there. There's this little metal bearing piece, so to speak. It's a retainer that's actually in between to kind of give it a little more rigidity. It's in between the hole right here. So what you have to do is you have to push it out, or from either underneath or push down from the top. So this little piece is basically removed. Once you do that, then you use the needle nose to basically remove this grommet from the shift column. Once it's gone, that's what you're gonna see us installing the ADDW1 kit. So let's jump straight into that. All right, remember how I said you needed the 12? So you need the 12 to remove this metal bracket right here. So that way it makes it easier to reach these. And I lied, it's actually, this is actually a 10. I'm sorry, I got it mixed up. This is a 10. These where the bushings are is a 12. So using good old 10.
Just don't lose it.
Yeah, note to self. We're gonna remove these so we can remove this metal bridge. So now with that piece gone, you can easily access each bolt in the front along with the two in the rear to be able to remove the bushings. Again, the note is that I do have aftermarket ones in there right now. So it's gonna be a little easier because they're gonna just come out straight off. But we're replacing these with the nice ADDW ones that's part of their full kit. So I'm excited, but at the same time, because this is a grueling process, really happy to do this for the last time. So now all the bolts are removed, so you should be able to lift this up, very easily. So one thing to know, I mentioned something about the ADDW1 kit not using spacers, and actually it kind of makes sense because when you look at the bolt itself has a spacer stock, so it's kind of redundant in a sense because these are pretty strong. There is something to note once we reassemble everything back on, which I will stress in a moment. But let's lift these up and remove the previous kit and get the ADDW1 kit in. Again, apologies for the noise, but you know me, I love doing product comparisons. So these are the other guys' aftermarket kit, and this is the ADDW1 kit. And you know, minus the namesake that they obviously have their name on it and everything, one thing to notice right off the bat is that theirs actually are a little lower profile. They sit a little lower. So for me, honestly, I actually kind of favor that. Because when you see right now, once they seat, you're gonna notice that the bushing, obviously the stock ones have quite a bit of girth, so they're seating the whole column up a little higher, which allows for the flex. Again, it's rubber. These though, because they're a little lower profile, I feel are gonna have a much more firm planted motion. So I'm excited about that because when I tried the aftermarket ones, basically having metal over rubber is a huge improvement, increasing the firmness of the shifting. You don't feel like mushiness or flexing. So having these be even lower, I feel like is gonna give you a huge advantage, especially when you're talking about some of us that have the short shifter installed, whether it's aftermarket or you have an R-Spec or Rally Edition. So I'm excited to get these on. Let's get. All right, so again, continuing that direct comparison. So these are the old ones, and here I'm just gonna show you the biggest difference. You see that? So they sit in there, but they still have they still have a slight gap. They don't actually just seat in. And this was kind of one of the heartaches of us installing these the first time around. Let me show you the ADDW ones. They just go straight in. So again, lower profile, you're just gonna have that firmness. Yeah, wow, this is quite an improvement. I mean, one, especially making it easier to install these, because the other ones would move all over the place. These at least you'll be able to seat down, place the shift column, and it's going to be there. It's not going to jiggle or wiggle. So yeah, I'm really stoked on this. All right, so now the reverse process of putting everything back together. So a few things to note, because I'm still tightening these up. When you start putting the bolt in, they should give you zero resistance as you're kind of hand tightening them with the extension. They should literally just drop right in and screw in relatively easily. The last one might give you a little bit of resistance just because everything's already settled in, so you can't really move the column around anymore to make it easier, because again, everything else is kind of in place. This is extremely important, and I can't stress this enough. Once you start tightening them, basically you feel that you're getting tension. Once you have that tension, you don't want to tighten it no more than an eighth of a turn. If you overdo it a little bit, that's fine, but I can't stress that enough. No more than an eighth. Okay, so right now I'm at the point where I feel resistance. So again, I said no more than eighth, so there we go, diagonal. That's kind of the best way I could describe it. Okay, so basically for me, it's basically once you can't, like, notice my hand is really weak. So once I can't just do it with, the most minimal force, that's when I'll basically realign. All right, so again, get it centered. So that way I have an actual focal point of direction, and then just tighten it there. So do that for all four, and then you should be set. All right, so backwards reverse installation, now that we've cleaned up, is we're putting the bridge on first, which is going to use the 10mm nuts that we're holding on to this tightening to the bolts that are already part of the chassis, I believe. Then after that, we're going to slowly and carefully replace the center trim piece and make sure it aligns with the current trim piece back here. And then the last but not least, after making sure that all the bolts are rebolted to everything, we're going to go ahead and put the last trim piece, and then yeah, and it's just reverse, but here you go. Make sure that those go in right there, push it in, and then you worry about that. So we gotta flex it a little bit, make sure that it's just installed properly. To note, to make your life easier with this portion, is move the seats all the way back. All right, last step of this process is tightening all four Phillips head screws back nicely, hand tight in. These ones you can honestly do almost as tight as you'd like, but obviously don't overdo it.
It'd be like me.
And then finally the last piece will be the remaining piece for this, along with the little handbrake cover. All right, the last trim piece, the cup holders, we're just gonna basically snap it in. It's already where it's supposed to be. So literally just snap in. We'll snap this back in, make sure it's straightened out. And then the last little piece is that, along with that little rubber cover. And push down on this because, again, this also kind of clips in. So no more, you won't feel a bulge, it'll be flat once it's gone in correctly. There we go. And then the last little piece, the little e-brake cover, which just falls into place pretty much. And then there we go. So this should lock, and we are fully done on the inside. Now to pop the hood and make sure that we're doing the next step. So I know I've said this before, but I'm going to reiterate this next, especially because of what's involved with doing the ones under the hood. This mod, or these mods if you're doing them individually, are not necessarily hard or difficult. It's just a lot of work is involved. So because of that, I say this is kind of like an intermediate job. Again, it's not for the faint of heart. With that being said, we're gonna go under the hood and replace the stock bushings with these, again, ADD W1 provided. These are nice and again, color to match. Not that you're gonna see them along with the other ones, but hey. Essentially, what we need to do is you do need to remove the intake. In my situation, I'm actually gonna try to do this without removing it because the short ram has such a specific shape that we might actually get lucky and not have to remove the intake track. So if you guys do need to do that because you have a stock intake, or maybe even get away with the cold air, but if you have a stock intake, you will definitely need to remove the stock intake airbox to do this next part. Again, because we have enough clearance, I might not have to do that, so any time saved is well worth it. So first step that we have to do is we have to unplug the battery. Remember, you always want to remove the negative first, as that's what creates ground, and then the positive. And then once we remove that, we'll basically be able to figure out if we can get away with doing this without removing the intake. So while I'm holding this, I'm having Subilu help us out. The only two bolts that you need to worry about for the negative and the positive are that bolt, which he just untightened, and then this one right here, right next to the fuses, which he just also untightened. So we're gonna do that. Next step is to remove the battery itself. There's a bolt down here, right in the center, and there's this bolt right here, which I'm gonna have to remove at the very least, just to remove that particular portion. Again, if you have the stock air intake, I believe that that's part of it, where the stock box is installed, along with this down here. Same if you have a cold air, I believe that's the and I'm pretty sure that part of the stock intake air box was mounted here at one point. It's been a while, so forgive me, I can't quite remember, but at the very least, we're unplugging the battery first. Alright, so that wasn't too hard. We removed the battery. That middle post that he was unbolting just previously is this whole little piece. Now, the next step is we have to remove essentially the under tray, which is two bolts, that one right over there, and then this one right here that's holding onto the positive terminal. And fifth one back there. So something to note is these two that were right here and this one back here were 12s. This right here and then the one that's holding the ECU are 10s, along with the one that was here, and the battery posts were also 10s. So just letting you guys know. All right, sit rep. So there's actually, if you see this harness right here, going all the way over there, part of that harness is actually attached to the under tray right over here where I'm holding, it's kind of hard to see, but right here where I'm pointing. So you'll probably need a body panel removal tool or a flathead screwdriver to help you wiggle that out to unlock it. And it does seem like no matter what, we're gonna have to remove those extra 2 bolts to the ECU bracket. You don't have to remove the ECU, don't do that, because it seems like there's one extra bolt holding the under tray right underneath the ECU. So yeah, so much for avoiding that step. All right, so another thing we discovered is that you're actually also gonna have to take off the bolt for this fuse panel right over here, because in order to remove the bracket, which is the bolt right underneath this one, you're actually gonna have to kind of need the extra real estate, so do that. Also, the negative terminal is clipped onto the harness via this clip right here, so you'll just want to pry that off for a second. And as you can see, we're able to at least push the ECU back, and there is the last bolt that's holding the under tray and stopping us from getting to the bushings. So let's go. All right, so voila, we've removed the tray, and I'm pretty sure you're like, well, what's all this mess underneath here? So here's one of the bushings. The other one is a little tucked away down there on the side, so that's gonna be a little hard. Quick update, that last bolt that was holding the under tray was a 12 millimeter. First thing you need to do to be able to remove this bushing right here is you need to remove that pin, because otherwise that's not going to lift the way I was just doing that. So simple enough, you lift it up. Whoa, as you can see, it's literally not hard. You can remove it from that guide back there to get a little more wiggle room, this guide bracket right here, and you probably have to do that for the smaller one, which is right next to it. For this one, again, we're gonna see if we can get away with just doing it this way. All right, so I did this a little backwards, but as you can see, that left one right there where the light, but you see that little metal piece, it's got the yellow right there, basically that right there, that's where the other shift bushing's at. So what I did was I removed the pin. I removed this pin using needle nose pliers. Save it because some kits don't have it. We're focusing on the ADD W1 kit, and I think they actually provide you with an extra one. But, and as we're illuminating down there, I basically, once you remove the pin, this literally just comes straight off the guide. And I don't see this little metal guide I'm touching down here. It just slides right off. This was actually not as difficult as I thought. I used needle nose pliers to remove the actual bushing. This is the bushing right here. Again, to make your life easier, you can remove it from the whole cable from this guide right here where I'm pointing. There's the other one. So you can remove it from there. I actually didn't need to do that, which is kind of impressive considering I have fat hands. So now I'm literally just gonna replace the bushing back in there, the smaller one. I'll show you it right now. Put it back in its guide, and then put the pin in. That's probably gonna be the harder part. It shouldn't be too hard, but We'll find out right now. All right, so this is the aftermarket ADDW1 bushing for that smaller cable. And as I said, they do include new pins, so A+ to them. So update, I'm quite a bit exhausted. I feel like the last time I did a video or a little, recording, probably been an hour, maybe an hour and a half. So everything is rather straightforward. The part that we got caught up on is we were doing that small one first because we felt like it'd be the most complicated based off of location. And while that's true, the location isn't actually what was giving us the hard part. It's the actual bushing itself. It almost feels like it's too thick or exactly like the actual size to get it in. And I'm gonna be 100% blunt with you. It's the right part, it's the right kit. I almost felt like it was luck that helped us out and a lot of WD-40. Subilu, huge shout out. He helps out obviously immensely, but what I'm going to show you real quick, and forgive me because the actual bearing is going to look thrashed. Again, no one's going to see these, but you see that it's finally on there, pin and all. What we ended up doing to make our life easier, besides add WD-40, was we used a set of pliers. So we used these in essence to basically grip the plastic piece and the actual backing of the bushing and kind of sandwich it in. And even though that sounds like a simple enough solution, it is, but it was very tedious, a lot of hard work. At times you just had to kind of find some sort of leverage. We used this little kind of hammer to help us out, and then at the end we were able to put that pin in with a little bit of help of the hammer as well. So that's done. I've actually, I've heard from places that one is hard at times, even from like regardless of the manufacturer. So just giving you guys a heads up. So disclaimer, this isn't hard, and this has nothing to do with the manufacturer, because if you actually go through forums, you'll see that even other kits have had a similar issue. So just expect a little bit of, nudging, wiggling, ingenuity on your behalf. Give yourself definitely a full day, because like all car projects, even though, this probably shouldn't realistically take more than an hour, that one obviously gave us a little bit of hard work. So now we're going to move on to the second one, which is the large one, and hopefully it's going to be much easier. The location itself is easier as it is. So we got this bushing, the big one, removed. It's right here in my hand, and Subilu is basically going to do the test fit of the large one, which is luck.
Let's hope this one isn't as complicated as the first one. You got light?
I don't, but...
Can you see?
Yeah, I can kind of see.
Oh. What the fuck? Are you serious? Are you serious? What in tarnation?
Oh my goodness, we needed a break, so I'm so glad that one's actually easier one. So, yay. Now, we just have to put the pin and then put everything back together and we'll be A-okay. No, I don't think so. I think this is... Oh, I lied. We put it in, and then there's actually a little C-snap ring that he has in his hand. So we have to put that within the little edge. So that's what we're doing right now. Again, this is probably not as hard as the other thing was. So we'll just put that snap ring in the lip, make sure that it seals up, and then we'll be good to go. Oh, sit rep, and just like that, this one was much easier, but we did have to kind of figure out a way to whiten the clip, as you'll see right now. So as you can see, there it is, pretty in red. The snap ring, nice and neat. Now next step is literally just to put the new cotter pin, the new pin. Oh my god, hiccups. So next step is, as you can see, we're just gonna put the pin in, and then voila, done, nice and simple. As you can see, I couldn't really show you on the other one because it's kind of hard to view, but make sure, I'm gonna zoom in real quick, make sure that it gets at least to that point, so that little middle part is kind of hugging it. See how it's kind of designed to have that little bulge. So yeah, you don't want to go past that. They're not meant to go past that, so that's the exact way to put it. Now we just have to put everything back together, but fortunately, as you can see, this one is installed over here. Can't really tell, but it's there. It's a little scraped up because it was kind of hard to get in, we had to wiggle it. But yeah, project done. Okay, first things first, before you put the tray in, which is technically the first step to putting it all back together, actually go inside the car and make sure that all of your gears are engaging. The reason being is that once you remove all this linkage, your shifter should have been basically dead, not hitting any sort of particular gear, because again, it can't engage because it's all unplugged. So it should have just been kind of, I guess the best way I can describe it is flaccid, with no engagement points. So make sure you go back in, forgive me for the wind noise, but make sure you go into the car and engage every single gear, including reverse. Make sure that it feels nice and solid the way it should be, you know, because otherwise you might want to go back and inspect your installation update. Also, actually, one thing to make sure is, I don't know if you can see, but you see where the scrunchy part is? So make sure that this whole part right here, this little scrunch area, goes all the way back here, kind of meeting up to this little connector piece. I know it's hard to see without a light, but make sure that all of this right here is going all the way back down for both sides before you put the tray back in, because otherwise, I don't think it's going to damage anything. But again, originally it's there to cover, make sure no dust particles get in. So yeah, I know I had Lou remove the tray real quick just to show you guys. So now that you made sure that, you know, your gears are working and that that's okay, now make sure to put it back as so. Alright, so as we're putting things back together, I just kind of wanted to show you the progress. So there was a bolt behind the ECU that was the first one that Lou put on, because afterward, essentially, you kind of want to remount the ECU. So again, don't forget that you would have had to have loosened this up to kind of get some leverage with this bottom bracket bolt for the ECU. Remount this one up here to the pillar, and then there's one more that we're about to put. Essentially, there was 3 12s down here. This one in the corner, these two right here, and then there's another one that's going to go here to again reconnect the positive lead cable. One thing we just connected also from the tray was a cable down here. Just make sure that you re-snap that into place. And then if you're wondering what this is, that's actually, once you put the battery back in, you have this whole bracket. So, and then lastly for me, once we do that, we'll put in the little, what's it called? The little kind of bushing to the anti-vibration bushing for the intake kit. Alright, so we basically just remounted everything back up. The last thing that we're missing is obviously the battery. And then this harness right here, the ground will actually pop into that hole right there once we do that. But the one disclaimer, because again, you're going to be re-adding power to your whole system, is make sure all your doors are closed. I don't think it's a huge issue, but I recommend it just because some of you guys might have things that obviously like light up. The lights, obviously, if you have them on, and the hatch itself has a light in there. So, you know, before we put the battery back on, you just want to make sure that anything that would normally start drawing power immediately is observed. So Lou just closed all my doors, including my hatch, and now he's about to drop in the battery. We'll tighten it. Now, when you put a battery in, it's the exact opposite. You do ground last, so you'll actually do power first and then ground. So yeah, just good little rules to make sure that you're as safe as possible. And just like that, voila, everything's back to the way it should be. And now the only real question is to start her up, drive her, and see what those extra bushings did to our drivability. So let's go in. Alright guys, so as you can see, we're at home base, and I just obviously finished test driving the car, and I got back home, and there's always some sort of noise causing havoc. Anyways, long story short, it's quite a difference, especially for those of you guys that do spirited driving. Forgive me for the wind noise. It's definitely nice, honestly. For those of you guys that are a little intimidated by some of what we just did, at the very least, I would highly recommend doing the shift bushings that go on the actual shifter column, because those will definitely eliminate the mushiness that you feel when you're going into gears, and it just feels more solid and more firm when you're doing it. The other bushings that go on the actual cables underneath just kind of make the actual play feel like it's non-existent almost. So basically, when you go into gears, normally if you're in first gear, second gear, say whatever gear, you do feel sometimes on some cars that there's a tiny bit of play in between the actual gear while it's engaged. So this kind of eliminates that. Like right before I test drove it, I noticed that even the sway from neutral, dead center to going towards the left, towards the first, second, and reverse gears was almost, you know, minimized a little bit. So that's essentially what you could expect. When you're driving, everything just feels nice and firm. There's no more mush. Everything is solid, just confidence. And essentially, if you're trying to do some spirited driving on some twists and turns, some autocross, or even obviously drag racing, it makes a world of a difference. So guys, that's it for the video. I wanted to say thank you so much to Subi Lu and my cousin for helping out. Huge shout out to ADDW1 once again for sponsoring the video with the parts and, you know, letting us prototype them as always. And I know I say prototype, but these parts are actually out in the market, readily available to buy as individual pieces or obviously together to complete the kit. So again, thanks to the sponsors, thanks to my friends always helping me out, and thank you guys for being so patient with the videos. As you saw, we just had crazy weather in California and quite a bit of a roller coaster waiting for parts, so that's why there's been a delay in videos. But cool thing is I have a lot of projects in store. I have a lot of, once again, finally parts in, so you should start expecting at least a few videos consecutively. Forgive me for the wind noise, but thanks guys for all the love and support, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. So the one thing that sucks about new mods and removing the battery is that the ECU has to readjust. And I just saw my range just drop from like 300 to 288. I don't know, like some of you might say it has nothing to do with it, but I'm pretty sure like the ECU is like recalibrating at the moment of a cold start and realizing like, oh, I got more airflow, I got more this, more that, so essentially I can use more fuel. I don't know. But she starts.